Hi guys, so now for this unit, what have we learned so far? We have learned how to do a one sample z-test for P using the state, plan, do, conclude method. So when we conclude, we talked about this in the last notes. We're using that p-value, comparing it to alpha to write that conclusion. Now today what we want to focus on is what is that p-value? We know how to find it, but what is it? Okay. So the first definition or thing that I want you to write down is just the definition or the interpretation of a p-value. And that is the probability of getting a statistic as extreme or more extreme than what we calculated, given that null hypothesis is true. So take a second right now, pause it, write it down, and I'm going to go through an example where we can talk about it in context with you on the next page. Okay, so hopefully you paused it, wrote that down, and now let's go on to what does a p-value actually do? It helps us decide if we have enough evidence to reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis based on that comparison to alpha, okay? So pause that for a second, and then I just have one more slide for you. And on that slide, we're gonna just go through a problem. We're not gonna do the whole problem, just certain parts of it, the state and the do, and then we'll interpret that p-value. All right. Okay, forgive me if this is a touch disjointed. Someone came to my door, so I had to pause it real quick and take care of that. So right now, what you should have in your notes is what is a p-value, the interpretation, and what does the p-value do? So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through a quick example just so you can see in context what it does, how it helps us, so on and so forth. So let's read through this now. After once again losing a football game to the arch rival, a college alumni association conducted a survey to see if alumni were in favor of firing the coach. An SRS of 100 alumni from the population of all living alumni was taken, and 64 of the alumni in the sample were in favor of firing the coach. Suppose you wish to see if a majority of living alumni are in favor of firing the coach. State the hypothesis, find the appropriate p-value, and interpret what the p-value means. Okay, so this is not asking us to go through the state, plan, do, conclude model. It's just asking us for that state, finding the p-value, which is the do part, and then interpreting what the p-value means. Not concluding like we've been doing in the past. It wants to know, can you say in context what this actually means? So let's start with the state part, okay? Let's actually talk about the p, because that p is our context, right? And we always say the true proportion. I can spell, I promise. Of living alumni who are in favor of firing the coach. Okay, now we have our null hypothesis and our alternative hypothesis. And, oh, I can do this. It's going to be a P and a P. And now we have to go from there. What are we looking for? Is there a current claim? There is not a current claim. It does tell us right here, though, we want to see, meaning we want to see if we have evidence, if the majority of living alumni are in favor of firing the coach. So that's telling us what we're trying to find evidence for. And when we're looking for a majority, we're looking for something that is greater than 50%. Okay, so now if we know what we're finding evidence for, then we also know what our null hypothesis is. So there's our stating the hypothesis. Now we're skipping the plan and we're going right to the do. Okay, so first step is finding that p hat. And that's the part of the total sample. So 64 of the 100 people sampled were in favor of firing the coach. There's my part. There's my total sample. So p hat is equal to 64 divided by 100, which is equal to 0.64. Step 2 in the do, that's our p. And we know our p from the null hypothesis, so that's 0.5. Step 3 is our standard deviation. And I have that here in this math type. And I need to take a picture of it. Give me a second. And here's our standard deviation. Now, some of you may be like, what? How did she get that? Just remember, you already have it in your notes, but the standard deviation formula is the P times the 1 minus P, which is 0.25, divided by the sample, and then taking the square root of that all, okay? So that's our third step. Our fourth step then is going to be finding that z-score. So I'm going to take 0.64 minus 0.5 divided by 0.05, because it's always what we observed minus our mean, so that's the mean of our distribution, okay? Our p hat minus our p divided by our standard deviation. I like this process, this do process, because it's the fourth step. The z is always step 1 minus step 2 divided by step 3. And that's going to give us 2.80. I can type, I promise, okay? And then that fifth step is to find that p-value, okay? And so I want to go to my p-value chart, which is right here, okay? And 2.80 gives us 0.9974. And now because our alternative hypothesis is a greater than problem, we need to do 1 minus 0.9974, which should give us, if I can do the math in my head, okay, 0.0026, okay? So 0.0026 is our final p-value. Now it's asking, interpret this p-value, okay? It is not asking us to conclude. However, though, if our alpha was 0.05 or even 0.10 or even 0.01, we would reject the null hypothesis and have evidence that the true proportion of living alumni are in favor of firing the coach, okay? Or it's greater than 0.5, you could say as well. But that's not what it's asking. It's asking us to interpret the p-value. So how would I do that? I would just state that when I interpret it, I'd say the p-value is equal to 0.0026. This is the chance of calculating a statistic as extreme or more extreme than we calculated, given the null hypothesis is true. And this is the part where we need to actually put it in context. Now, if you're wondering, like, what do you mean the statistic? The statistic that we calculated would be that 0.64, okay? So this is the chance or the probability of calculating a 0.64 or more extreme than that, given the null hypothesis is true, okay? So what is our null hypothesis? The null hypothesis is the true proportion of living alumni who are in favor of firing the coach is 0.50. Okay, guys, so what should we have gotten from today? What is a p-value? The interpretation of it. What does it do? It helps us to decide if we should reject or fail to reject, and then putting it in context. You guys have a great day. Please reach out if you guys have any questions at all. Take care.